Greetings, Martians. Alright, here we go. So, what I wanted to get into is, in the last video, I'm talking about this Neurosity headset, this EEG brain waves, different EEG devices are available for collecting data, and we can now all of a sudden predict a bunch of things and build applications. Now, to the average person who's never heard of this technology, that sounds absolutely preposterous. It sounds like some next level futuristic thing. So I wanted to kind of break down why this is like just it's accessible stuff, what we have right now. Now, where it goes in the future is anybody's guess and a topic of a different video. But certainly in terms of what are the foundations of these different devices, these supposed devices that allow the human brain to interact with a computer application. What exactly is that? And I want to just break down the different things, the different components essentially that would allow for such a device to be created. And these devices are called brain computer interfaces, BCIs. I see this term probably getting a lot more popular in the next 10, 20, 30 years. That time scale, exponential. So a BCI is essentially human and brain interacting with one another. Now, predominantly the brain, sorry, not human and brain, computer and brain. Speaking too fast, thinking too slow. But the computer and the brain interacting through the stimulus, a biological stimulus that the computer can detect and that a human being, a user, can intentionally create. So if I wink with my left eye and wink with my right eye, and this can be accurately detected at all times, this can be turned into a signal for the input to a system. Left eye, turn left. Right eye, turn right. Now, how would you accurately do that in a car? It's impractical sitting there, and it's not real time enough. Well, for something a lot slower, like skip a song or rewind a song, you could. Now, can you do that with your brain, is the question. So if you're thinking left, we don't necessarily need to know if your brain is actually thinking left. You don't actually have to know, are you literally thinking left? It's more, is left different enough to right? Left and right, are they different enough, and are they recognizable that you're thinking one as opposed to the other? And that's the question. Is there information in these headsets that are here? I got mine sitting right here, it's charging, I don't want to pick it up. But in these different EEGs, and basically for what's accessible to a developer, sure, but in general, what is the extent of what's really possible with the action potentials through a thick skull, and that's the boundary that's going to be pressed through these devices over time. Like, what is really possible, and people don't know yet. I'm trying to build. I just recorded the video of like a little coding session there, building a multi-input output brain-computer interface. I'm trying to work on something, trying to hack it through. Basically, I'm no expert. I don't think anyone really is at this point with this kind of stuff. So the different BCIs, like, what are we actually looking for from the brain? Like, what can an electrode detect that is distinguishable? So now I'll tell you a few different phenomena. So imagine an experiment where you look at images of a square, and eventually an image of a triangle flashes, and you're told prior to the experiment, focus on the triangle when it shows up. So you're looking for a triangle, you see square, 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 triangle. Now see, when you do that in a lab with the electrodes on, maybe even with this on, I'm going to try to replicate this at some point too. If you do this, is it possible to when you do this in the lab, it's been shown you detect what's called an ERP, event-related potential. It's a specific event. The oddball paradigm is what they call this, or the oddball experiment, or whatever. It's just this measuring system where show them an image that they're told to focus on infrequently, and then measure that response at that exact time. After about 400 milliseconds, 300 to 400 milliseconds, there's this positive potential. I think it's a positive potential, yeah. And it's like it's a spike, that distinct spike, and it's like, okay, that was thought about. That specific thing was thought about now. So that can be detected quite accurately. So how do you train yourself to, for the human being, it's like, how can you, it's subconscious in many ways. It's going to happen anyway when you see that stimulus, but like, how can you accurately get it so that you're doing it on demand as an input? That's the challenge with that biological underlying biological phenomena. So that underlying biological phenomena of seeing something that you were told to specifically focus on and recreating that response. Now that, even if you think about that thing, like that green triangle, you'll create the response in your brain. So it's easily detectable. So that is something that these algorithms look for to classify. And then once they classify it and say, yes, that spike was detected. So that spike is the key marker, that biomarker was detected. All right, now turn on system. So when the ERP for left is detected, or let's say left is triangle and right is circle, and square is what you're looking at majority of the time, then two different types of ERPs. Are they distinguishable? Maybe not. Maybe if it's just a magnitude and amplitude, it's not distinguishable. So deviating now, there's other types I want to talk about. That's an ERP, event-related potential. So what I'm trying to get across though with all this is that there's an underlying biological phenomena that's observed in experiment that is then exploited through the electrodes, and it shows in the data. There's something measurable that has been shown. Okay, this happens. This is a thing. All right, now let's exploit that to create it, to manipulate it with our conscious mind or whatever apparatus we use around us, to then do that on demand, to then trigger a digital output to a system, or a digital output from, analog output from our brain to a digital output, to a digital input for a system. So the other ones are, well, the most powerful one is really motor imagery, right? Motor imagery. You think about moving your left arm, specifically your left arm, and the part of your brain that goes off with that is the somatosensory cortex. So around central part of your brain right here. Okay. So that is controllable, and it's learnable if you distinctly create neural responses, like that information inside your action potentials. Now, what is that information? What is going on there that you can actually look at realistically? Like, what to someone who's looking into it, it looks like a bunch of goddamn numbers, right? It's like, what the heck are we looking at here, guys? Well, it's not just the sodium and what it actually is sodium and potassium ions going in and out of cells and creating electrical, like small electrical and magnetic fields in your brain to send big groups of them, sending impulses across regions that then activate behaviors that are observed in labs, right? So yes, it's that, but then what frequency do those oscillations happen at? What is the amplitude? What is the frequency in different bands? So you got a range of frequencies these waves could be. So you might have some in the 0 to 5 range, the delta hertz, some in the 8 to 15 hertz range, or 8 to 14, the alpha, and so on, the other bands, beta and theta and gamma even. So they can be observed, but they have different relative powers. So you'll have like a power spectral density is what engineers call it, and scientists, engineers, whatever, mathematicians, power spectral density, where you have the power in different frequency bands. So the changes in power seem to indicate the changes in when you're thinking of left, the amplitude in the like the power in the 8 to 13 hertz range is a bit weaker than when you think about right. So, and as a part of that particular region of the brain, it's discoverable inside those electrodes, like it's within the frequency information of the electrodes. So that's kind of where the thinking's at. Like that's really the fundamental thesis here, that that's the information. That's the critical information, that something like a bunch of electrodes can actually translate into complex motor actions. You know, that's fundamentally what's going on here. So it sounds exciting to me. Oh, that's what I'll tell you. That's what I'll tell you for sure, man. For me, that sounds mad exciting. That's like well exciting. You know, it's something to discover. It's something to really get into, and to, you know, research, contribute, explore more, see what's out there, see what's happening, see what's possible, and push the boundaries, because this is the time the boundaries are getting pushed here. Now, is it worth it? Hell yeah, it's worth it. I mean, I think it's cool as hell. I think it's the goddamn coolest thing in the world. So yeah, for me, I'm on it. So if someone else out there's on it, holla at your boy. But for sure, man, I love it. But yeah, that's a few different. I'm gonna cut it out now. But to recap, to summarize, that's a couple of different fundamental things that can be detected. I mentioned event-related potentials, and then I mentioned motor imagery. So there's other ways, but I think the other ways are a little bit rudimentary. I don't even want to mention them in the video, but if anyone really is interested, look into steady state visually evoked potentials. That's essentially where you shine a light at a certain frequency, and then in the occipital region, those same frequencies are predominantly strong, and they're detected from around here. Now, these headsets that I have aren't best suited for those kind of BCIs and getting those kind of inputs. Now, I think what I have is probably best suited towards, I'd say it's best suited towards motor imagery and probably ERPs as well. Whenever the frequency band, I mentioned about frequency band power, it's going up and down. Like inside a certain band of like 5 to 10 hertz, the power, so the strength of the frequency in that band, it fluctuates. So that's called event-related desynchronization and event-related synchronization, ERD and ERS. And that's actually, once again, another recorded underlying biological phenomena, which with some linear algebra, multivariate calculus, you can just get that in and into the frequency domain. So it's a very fundamental concept in a lot of sort of when you first go into electrical engineering, you know, four-year analysis, which is all about the frequency domain. It's like you get that in. The conceptual understanding of that was something I remember I had it grinded into me in my first year of college, but like it was not easy. And that conceptual understanding is quite critical in analyzing EEG signals, like thinking about them in the frequency domain. I cannot stress that enough from my initial learnings of them. So I'm just a beginner as well here, just trying to get in the game and make some cool stuff happen, build the future. You know, that's sick, man. That's the way it's gotta be. So I'm out of here. Peace out. See you on the next one.